On June 10, 2007, Robert Kubica crashed. Despite the terrifying impact and splash of carbon fiber across the track, he'll be fine. The only injuries he sustained were minor and to the legs, but they would keep him out for a couple of weeks, forcing him to miss the next race, the 2007 US Grand Prix, necessitating a 1-week replacement driver. If you know this sport, you've heard his name. And even if you haven't, I think you'll like him, at least in good time. Meet Sebastian Vettel. The 2007 US Grand Prix would be a one-off opportunity for Vettel to get race experience, and he did well with it, earning 8th place, a points-paying position, becoming in the process the youngest ever driver at the time to score points. Later that season, he would drive 7 races as a replacement for Toro Rosso, then get a permanent seat there for 2008. There's a bit of basic Formula One knowledge to be known here. Some teams, for a variety of reasons, are faster than others, and so not all cars have equal chances of victory at each race. In fact, relatively few teams ever have that chance. On the right, we see the proportion of teams in a given season who have won, very few, and on the left, the proportion of wins that belong to those top 2 teams, most of them. Toro Rosso, being a junior team to a factory outfit, is not among that race-winning set. The team started life as minority before being purchased by Red Bull and renamed to Toro Rosso, and dating back to 1985, they've been backmarkers the whole time, never even reaching the podium once, and things are more of the same in the Toro Rosso era under Red Bull. In his first qualifying at a permanent seat, the Australian Grand Prix 2008, Vettel got 10th. He's a little far back in this view as the lights go out and start his career in earnest. He makes his way to the first turn and, oh dear.
There's Sebastian Vettel, the hero of qualifying, but not so successful on Sunday afternoon.
After this collision in turn 2, Sebastian Vettel would retire from his first race as a permanent driver. Unfortunately for him, this would be the first of 4 straight DNFs, after an engine failure in Malaysia, some more contact in Bahrain, and another crash in Spain. He could only muster 17th in Turkey, and some may have wondered, after 5 fruitless races, if his career was going to flame out at the very beginning. This was the rocky path that drew Sebastian Vettel to Monaco. On a rainy day, it would be the most demanding mix of conditions Formula One has to offer. The race was chaotic in the tricky conditions, and driver after driver crashed out or were forced to pit to repair damage. Vettel would be overshadowed by the crashes and the battle with championship implications at the front, but much like a vestigial microstate principality persisting against the forces of history on the French south coast, he held on. Largely out of view of cameras, with chaos all around him that had swept him up on so many prior occasions, Sebastian Vettel survived. He eventually came home with a fantastic 5th place finish, his best ever result and the best showing for his team in the young season. Vettel from there alternated strong results with DNFs and took big momentum from 2 stellar points finishes into his team's home race at the fastest circuit on the calendar. Monza, 2008. Sebastian Vettel had been noted already for his abilities in the wet, see Monaco earlier that year, and the Toro Rosso car also tended to do well in the rain. Fortuitously for them, the whole weekend in Monza, it poured.
And I said, we have to push, we have to go for pole position, and it was...
Generally, F1's fairy tale results come from skill mixed with good luck and chaotic circumstances, but the story of Monza 2008 begins and ends with the talent of Sebastian Vettel and the confidence and relationship shared between himself and his team. Vettel drove the absolute wheels off the car and stuck it on pole, and when Saturday's rain rolled on into Sunday, they must have known this was the moment of a lifetime. Starting first from a rolling getaway, Vettel was clinical and magnificent, driving off into the sunset, not once having to deal with the obscuring spray that affects trailing drivers in wet conditions. He had to push, but lap after lap that he kept it on the road, he wrote himself a new story, or rather solidified the existing narrative that threatened to disappear after his 4 DNFs at the opening of the season. As the rain subsided, the team executed the swap to inters on a drying track, and he was home free. With 12 seconds of advantage, Sebastian Vettel won the Italian Grand Prix.
You have won the Italian Grand Prix. You have won the Italian Grand Prix. I'm proud of you. Bravissimo. Bravissimo.
This was Sebastian Vettel, the young driver with huge skill and even more promise, having come good and provided a massive, massive result. The remaining 4 races of the season played out kind of how you might expect. Vettel in the points consistently, finishing a super impressive 8th place in the driver's standings, far beyond what his car should have allowed him. For that, he was rewarded with a spot in the senior team, Red Bull Racing. The first season with Red Bull would be a strange one though. BAR Honda had basically imploded during the off-season and was revived ad hoc as Brawn GP under Ross Brawn, the legendary former Ferrari director. Out of nowhere, Brawn's Jenson Button won 6 of 7 to begin the season as Vettel tried to keep up, but Button had virtually ended the championship there. Vettel came close as the Brawn's performances waned in the second part of the season, but he fell short, coming in at somewhat distant second.
I want a one-word answer, very quickly. The Constructors' World Champion, Jonathan.
I've gone for McLaren.
Ferrari.
McLaren.
Red Bull.
Didn't we know that was going to happen? Didn't we know that was going to happen?
What the hell's that? I don't laugh when you give your answer.
Don't worry. Okay, let's talk about the drivers as well. David, Sebastian Vettel and Mark Webber, done. Martin, who do you reckon could win the Drivers' World Championship?
Fernando Alonso.
Okay.
Hamilton.
Hamilton.
Okay, and you don't get an answer after your last one. Oh, go on. Come on.
Sebastian Vettel.
Oh, surprise, surprise! Look at that. Right, there you go. Those are the thoughts of our experts ahead of the Formula One season.
Despite the derision from pundits, Vettel got the first 2 poles but without the points to show for in the first 2 races. Then after weathering the rain in Malaysia all weekend, race day in the sun was all good for Vettel, who charged to first. Felipe Massa led the championship after 3 races. Then after round 5 in Spain, Jenson Button went top, before a Red Bull 1-2 at Monaco, led by Vettel's teammate. The chronically unlucky Aussie and Mark Webber sent them both to the top of the championship, with Webber leading Vettel on countback alone, both on 78 points. Then came Turkey. Mark Webber led this one from the lights, and it took an undercut to get Vettel past Hamilton, but he slotted into second behind his more experienced teammate. Mark Webber was an established figure in the sport, really beloved by fans, and there was a sense that he had never gotten a real shot in a great car. But here he was, leading the Grand Prix, trying to win his 3rd in a row and establish a championship lead in a fast car, with Vettel putting on the pressure. All that backstory makes it really bad when this happens.
Oh, they've come together! Webber and Vettel have come together. That's Vettel going out, Webber going out. What was going on there? Through goes Jenson Button. Ahead goes Lewis Hamilton.
Almost immediately, the blame comes right down on Vettel, having squeezed Webber, plausibly causing the accident. To some, this was Sebastian Vettel. Fiery, fast, but impetuous and childish. The crash with his teammate also damaged his championship hopes. He would take home good points in Canada with a 4th, and then win the European Grand Prix in Valencia, putting himself back in the mix. Vettel never led the championship, but he was always there, and then he put himself seriously in contention in Japan. Suddenly, Vettel sat 14 points behind his teammate and tied with Fernando Alonso, with just 3 races left. With the lead in Korea under a deluge, disaster would strike for Vettel, and Fernando Alonso won the race in his absence, taking a 25-point lead in the process and first place. In Brazil, Vettel needed to win to keep his hopes alive. With Fernando Alonso putting in huge performances every race, nothing less would do. Vettel jumped Hülkenberg off the line and drove away, but not before his teammate Mark Webber would slot in. These two, at least at the time, were not friends. They did not like each other, and at times it spilled over onto the track and disrupted what they ultimately needed to do. One might have even predicted from the start that these two men, anxious to get their shot for different reasons, would have butted heads. But as they pulled off into the distance in Sao Paulo, they were nothing if not fast. After they dealt with a safety car, they finished 1-2 with Vettel in front, and as a team, they were champions. It wouldn't be true to say that they had put their differences aside. They hadn't really. But it's also not the case that they succeeded entirely in spite of that animosity. Indeed, their personal and professional rivalry pushed them both to the limit, and what they found out there, in their endeavors trying to break each other down, was an unlikely and ironic gift, a shared victory. This was not the end of the story. With one race left, it was Alonso still in the lead of the championship, 8 points ahead of Webber, 15 to Vettel. With Lewis Hamilton 24 points away, he also had a mathematical shot, though it was unlikely. It would be 4 drivers then, in the final race, vying for one prize. Vettel was on pole, with Alonso in third. Things would have to go wrong for the Spaniard in order for Vettel to end up on top. In a circuit not known for overtaking, a terrifying first-lap crash and safety car would throw everything into doubt. Nico Rosberg and Vitaly Petrov both pitted on the first lap onto hards, looking to run the entire rest of the race without stopping. Alonso was overtaken at the start by Button, putting him in fourth, right on the precipice. He could do no worse than fifth. On lap 11, both Alonso and Webber struggled for grip and pitted. That put Alonso behind Vitaly Petrov and Nico Rosberg, those two that took early pit stops, and put Vettel in net championship position. Alonso would need to get past Petrov. He closed the gap to the Russian quick and pulled up to the back of the Renault, but he just couldn't do it. With everything on the line, it was just out of his reach. This was the last year before DRS was installed, and boy did this race show it. The Renault engine was pretty quick, and around Abu Dhabi, that made overtaking almost an impossibility. Ferrari's strategic assumption that Alonso's fresh tire pace would bring him forward through the pack, the assumption that everything was hinging on for them, was wrong. Out in front, Hamilton was chasing Vettel and was just a couple seconds off the pace. His only championship scenario involved a win, so he needed this one. Trying for an undercut, he pitted on lap 23, and suddenly Vettel's in-lap was everything. One lap on old tires, with the title on the line. The race entered its most critical phase.
Come on, Sebastian, give it everything you got. Come on.
As he drives out of the complicated pit exit road, taking all the risks, he ends up right where he needed to be. First place. With Hamilton still stuck behind Robert Kubica on a long first stint, Vettel extended his lead, just him in the car, out in front of everyone, ticking down the laps until there were none left. In the final race of the season, Vettel won the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix.
Okay, Sebastian, good job. I need to wait until everybody crosses the line. I need to wait, but it's looking good. You just wait, Sunshine, you just wait.
Rocky's words over the radio to Vettel in the time right after he crossed the line became famous for how well they captured the situation. Anything can and does happen in Formula One, and the championship was not official until the 5th car crossed the line. So Roquelin tells Vettel when each trailing car finishes, counting down until his win is confirmed.
Hamilton P2, Button P3.
The two McLarens came through in second and third, having led much of the championship themselves but falling out of contention after squandering a lot of those opportunities. Vettel's best battles with both of these men will be in the future. For Button, these will be in 2011, but Hamilton's time is further off still.
There's another two cars going round in 15 and 16. You wait, we just need the two cars, mate. Just those two cars. I think you'll like it. Rosberg, P4.
The best battles between Rosberg and Vettel will also come a couple years from now, but here they have quite a bit in common. Both are young guys with a lot to prove and enough talent to do it.
Kubica.
How fitting that Robert Kubica, the driver that Vettel temporarily replaced back at his debut, will be the last one to cross the line to confirm his championship. The absolute beginning of this story, marking this, a new beginning.
Kubica P5. Du bist Weltmeister.
The youngest champion ever, the unfancied and at times scorned Vettel, proving everyone wrong. These last 4 races were his best ever, completely unassailable from start to finish, barring the DNF in Korea, which was not his fault and without which he would have won easily. That bit of bad luck meant he still needed a little good luck at the end, and he got it in the form of a misguided opponent strategy, but with his own misfortune in Korea, who's to say that he didn't deserve that much? In one of the most chaotic Formula One title races in recent memory, where 5 different drivers had held the championship lead at some point, Vettel had stolen it right at the end. Funny enough, Vettel was not one of those 5 to lead. He hadn't sat in first place of the championship at any point, until the very end, the only point that matters. This was Sebastian Vettel, the champion. Sebastian Vettel had won his first title in 2010, but as Eddie Jordan famously said at the beginning of the next season, what do you do when it's over? You take your seat, you get back on, and the ride begins again. And so it did, and seemingly without too much trouble for Vettel. He would storm to victory in the first 2 races, both from pole, which would forecast his coming success. He won 11 of 19 races in 2011 and clinched the Drivers' Championship with 4 races to spare. His 15 pole positions over the season were an all-time record. Second place there was Jenson Button, although he was never really that close. However, the 2 most exciting races of the season, Hungary and Canada, the 2 the season is remembered for, the latter of which is an all-time classic, featured Button finishing first ahead of Vettel in changing conditions. That's kind of what happens when you're the best. Wins become expected, even pedestrian, and interesting races usually only come when you get toppled. That brought 2012. Remember the overarching chaos that ran through the entirety of the 2010 season, where no races were won by the championship leader at the time, and the eventual winner, Vettel, never led until the final race? Take that variance and unpredictability, and squeeze it all into the first third of the season.
Button wins in Australia amidst all the drama on the last lap.
This is one of the most beautiful. We are so proud of you.
But this time, it's Nico Rosberg who wins the Chinese Grand Prix.
All the time you have to leave us, please.
Well, they certainly have been firing all cylinders here today. Sebastian Vettel wins in Bahrain. Another different winner. It's Pastor Maldonado ahead of Fernando Alonso.
What a moment there.
Look how close those top 4 are after 77 and a half laps.
It's Mark Webber who wins the Monaco Grand Prix. streak is now Lewis Hamilton's.
On a great merry-go-round of a sporting season, 7 different drivers won the first 7 races. The usual suspects got wins in that time: Alonso, Hamilton, Webber, as well as Vettel, getting his in Bahrain, the 4th race of the season. And there were some fantastically unlikely wins in there that helped to keep the streak going. Nico Rosberg in China, and famously from Pastor Maldonado in Spain. Vettel's results had been shaky at best over the opening of the season, but so were everyone else's. Even after his worst start to a championship campaign as a Red Bull driver, even counting 2009 if you convert the scoring to the 25-point standard, he was just 3 points off the top of the championship, with most of the season still to go. Things would get worse, though, for young Vettel before they got better. In the lead of the European Grand Prix at Valencia, he would suffer a heartbreaking alternator failure in DNF, as Fernando Alonso would establish a title charge in earnest with a win, becoming the first repeat winner of the year. Vettel's 3rd and 5th place in the next 2 races weren't enough to keep Alonso from widening the gap, and by mid-season he was 44 points adrift. In Spa, Vettel finally got a little bit of good luck, finishing 2nd after Fernando Alonso got completely disastered by Romain Grosjean at turn 1, then faced more reliability issues with a DNF in Italy. After that, Vettel still found himself 39 points down, with 7 races to go. But Vettel always seemed to do better when things were just out of reach. First, it was a win in Singapore from the Lion of Singapore, at that track he loved more than any other. Then he just kept going.
Lights out, away we go, and Sebastian Vettel lights it up. Sebastian Vettel, it's going to come through, and what a performance in Suzuka. Lights out, away we go, as we come down into the first corner, Vettel has the advantage. And Sebastian Vettel's going to do it, he's going to win all 4 races in Asia, 4 in a row in one season.
With a magical series of 4 races, Vettel had played himself right back to the front of the championship picture. He was now in 1st place, 13 points ahead of Fernando Alonso as the season went to Abu Dhabi.
Sebastian Vettel starting from the pit lane. We know that they have been allowed to make...
In Abu Dhabi, Vettel would have more bad luck, having to start from the pit lane, coming out in last place after he underfueled in qualifying, at risk of losing his entire advantage in the championship. He got straight to work.
Good pace for Sebastian Vettel, he's 13th now.
A crash on lap 10 brought out the safety car and closed up the field. But it wouldn't continue that well for Vettel. While trying to warm up his tires under safety car, he got tangled up behind Daniel Ricciardo and destroyed his front wing, forcing another pit stop, placing him back in last place. Right from the restart, the mission was clear: overtake as many cars as humanly possible. He gets right to work again.
So Sebastian Vettel is up to 8th place. My goodness, what a charge.
After slicing through the grid, almost like it was nothing, the work still wasn't done for Vettel. He had burned through the best of his tires, so he pitted on lap 37, came out in 4th, and then got one more piece of good fortune. A Sergio Perez-Romain Grosjean chaos masterclass in the 2nd sector managed to bin 4 cars, including Grosjean and Mark Webber permanently, bringing out the safety car again, and allowing Vettel to close up to the back of Jenson Button. Vettel fought hard with Button, knowing that in this championship, every single point would be crucial. With just 4 chances remaining down the back straight, Vettel would pass Button and secure his spot on the podium. Coming from the pit lane, racing through setbacks, he saved his season with a fantastic 3rd place. After 2nd place in the USA with Alonso in 3rd, Vettel held a 13-point lead going into the final race in Brazil. Vettel qualified 4th in Sao Paulo, and Alonso would be 7th on the grid. The roles were reversed from 2010. Alonso would do however well he could, and would need things to go wrong for Vettel behind. In the first lap of the Grand Prix, Alonso got his wish.
Webber, though, forces his way past Alonso, but Vettel has dropped right back into the pack. Wow, we have a race on our hands. Vettel did not get away at all well there. Championship contender Sebastian Vettel has been hit. How much damage we don't know yet. What drama here on the first lap in Brazil.
Just like the theme of this late season, it would be a fight back from disadvantage. With Alonso in third, scoring 15 points, Vettel would need to at least score points, and do more than that if Alonso improved. But as conditions deteriorated, Vettel cut through the track. As other actions attracted the camera, and cars crashed and spun left and right, Vettel survived again.
DRS is now enabled, so there's more overtaking possibilities.
Fastest lap of the race so far, Sebastian Vettel in 20th place. Stay tuned, this is far from over. Vettel then's gone over the line in 8th place. Vettel up to P8.
P8 in just 7 laps, after starting by going the wrong way and sustaining massive damage, one of the all-time great recovery drives. But as rain came down and Vettel and Alonso both stopped for intermediates, cars were strewn all across the racetrack. Some on dries trying to stick it out, some on inters and a lap down. He would have to survive for some time longer to win the championship. But as the rain turned to a fine, persistent drizzle, the damage that Vettel took in the opening started to hurt his pace, and a couple of drivers got past him, but still not enough to put Alonso in championship position, as the Spaniard stuck in 4th. Out in front, the battle for the win was between Lewis Hamilton, Jenson Button, and the improbable Nico Hülkenberg, and Alonso was getting nowhere close to them. On lap 55, the rain started coming down harder once again, and Hülkenberg made a move for first.
And Hamilton and Hülkenberg come together.
And Alonso into World Championship taking position then.
This crash would send both drivers down the order, and eventually promoted Alonso to third after Hülkenberg took a penalty. Vettel pitted for inters, but Red Bull weren't ready and he lost time unnecessarily in the pit box with a broken radio. Vettel slipped down to 12th, and for a moment, Alonso was in place to win the championship. But as more drivers pitted, Vettel pulled into 9th with a daring overtake, and things swung back to him. On lap 59, as Hülkenberg took his penalty, Alonso easily passed his teammate Felipe Massa, and Vettel in 7th was on the precipice, just 1 point ahead of Alonso, as he made up ground on Schumacher ahead. Michael Schumacher, in his final race, was the last car that Vettel would likely encounter in the Grand Prix and the season. Schumacher had 7 titles to his name, considered by many to be the greatest ever, even today. As a German driver, he was Sebastian Vettel's childhood hero. Here he had Vettel behind him, in championship position but looking for a couple of insurance points. Schumacher didn't want his last actions in Formula One to be holding up the reigning and prospective champion. He let Vettel through. Schumacher's story is one to be told another time, but for a driver known for hyper-aggressive racing, sometimes going outside the rules to achieve his goals, you might say this was a complete reversal of everything that Schumacher had been in his career. I see it another way. It's a denouement. The belligerent and at times completely dominant driver, for once in his career taking it a little bit easy, a serene conclusion to a career anything but.
His gift and his last race is he doesn't put up any resistance at all to his young German friend.
On lap 70, with rain pouring down, Paul di Resta stuck it in the wall, bringing out the safety car and ending the race and the championship. Vettel had won again. It seemed like just yesterday that he was winning in Abu Dhabi 2010 to win his first title, but suddenly, this was Sebastian Vettel, 3-time world champion. Spare a thought, though, here for Fernando Alonso. He fought so hard to even keep his car on the road, fighting the whole championship in an inferior Ferrari, and things ended up just out of reach for him, as with 2010. Two of the finest campaigns ever for a driver, and neither were enough. Sebastian Vettel's past championship battles had taken him against various popular drivers, in Alonso, in Mark Webber, in Jenson Button, and by 2013 his dominance through all of it seemed to have started to wear on fans. In Malaysia 2013, after Red Bull had posted up in first and second, with Mark Webber winning, they decided to save their car's engines and not have the two race each other, and essentially cruise home as it was. With Webber's engine tuned down to preserve longevity, Vettel instead furiously chased down his teammate and overtook against the team's orders in what many saw as a stolen win, even today with hindsight, coming to be known as the Multi-21 race for the disobeyed order that Red Bull had given to Vettel to stay behind Webber. 2013 was Webber's last season, and he ended up without a win in his farewell campaign. Meanwhile, Vettel was in the middle of absolutely cruising away with the championship. After the summer break, he won in Belgium, then in Monza, establishing a completely dominant lead at the top of the championship table. Fans always love to hate the dominant driver, and Vettel's run-ins with more popular men than him caused him to draw the ire of the public. On the podium after winning at Singapore, the 3-time, presumptive 4-time world champion was booed, despite the pleas of Martin Brundle.
It's always this man that seems to be chasing you up here on the podium with you. Please don't do that. That's not correct.
They're on a tour, they go around with a bus.
Was this really Sebastian Vettel, the villain? The wins kept coming, though, for Vettel, in both Korea and Japan, then to a circuit that Vettel thrived at more than most. He started from pole and employed a daring strategy, pitting on the second lap and then soaring through the field to win by 30 seconds. By all accounts, a momentous accomplishment, and he sealed there the World Championship again, the 4th time in a row. For some, it seemed robotic, one race after another with the same result. But there in India, he disobeyed the typical podium procedure and went out to the grid after the race, and celebrated with the fans, doing donuts, and famously bowing before the car that had brought him so much success. And this time, nobody was booing.
What a way to celebrate. And here in India, he is surely a superhero.
Vettel would go on to complete the second half sweep, winning 9 races in a row, at the time a record. But the display that he put on in India, the gratitude that he showed for the fans, and especially to the engineers that got him to where he was, that is what stands out most from this season. In 2014, new regulations opened up the turbo hybrid era, and Red Bull struggled as a new team surged to the front. The unfortunate Lewis Hamilton had quarreled with his team, McLaren, as reliability continuously denied him wins and even championship hopes. He moved to Mercedes in 2013, and they aced the new regulations and dominated the next season. Vettel didn't even get a win that year, and by October, he needed a change. He had accomplished everything he wanted with Red Bull, and now that their reign was over, it was time to move on. The legendary German driver followed in the footsteps of his hero, Michael Schumacher, and joined Ferrari.